Hello, Tazik. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Howard the Duck, and a few other people that are here. See 5 people here. And a few other people are probably watching over on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, when I had the opportunity to catch any chat, I look on Twitch. Hello, Sky Crane. I wanted to give a thank you to Alistair. You know who you are. Thank you for the gift, the support that just came in. I think it was in the last day or two on PayPal. I really do appreciate it. All the funds, as you know, I try to be as transparent as possible. Most of my costs are online on a budget tab if you go to houstonic.live or houstonicits.com. And thank you to Gene. I think I just received a card from you. I haven't opened it yet. Thank you very much. For other people, P.O. Box 505, Southborough, Massachusetts. I think a lot of people don't understand what this little animation is about here. I wanted to just review here. This little animation, it's a stop, what do they call it? Stop photo, stop animation type video. And what it is it's a little Lego figure. Little Lego figure. It happens to be a Harry Potter Lego figure. There's no particular reason why it was a Harry Potter Lego figure other than the fact that it was the only Lego figure that I guess this particular relative of mine had. This was put together by a relative of mine. I won't be too specific. And this was done in the first year that I started to make my program. The dollhouse, because it's not actually in a Lego house that it was filmed in, was built by my father-in-law. Now, my wife has 2 dads, like a lot of people in the United States these days. You know, you have your stepfather, your regular father, because of all the divorces, etc. So, in this case, when I'm referring to my father-in-law, it was actually her stepdad. He was a very good carpenter. He was actually professionally, he was a school principal for a middle school, elementary school here in Massachusetts. He was a principal for so many years. He won actually awards. Last name was Lowry. But he did carpentry on the side, and he actually built a bunch of dollhouses. And so that was actually a dollhouse that he built for someone else and eventually became my relative's when she was young. So I asked her, could you do a little Lego figure, maybe walking into the house and going upstairs? And it sort of represents the fact that my studio is in the corner of a bedroom in my house. So that was supposed to be me. There was no other reason that she used the Harry Potter Lego figure other than the fact that I guess she didn't have a lot of Legos. But she thought it'd be fun to do that. And this is actually her handwriting here, where it says houstonic.live. I didn't actually ask her to write that. She just decided to do that on her own. Now, this is already over 6 years ago, so she's grown up. She's grown up. This does tie in, though, because the picture that you see on the screen here is a man named Dr. Bill Sears, or Dr. William Sears. Now, Dr. Sears was actually mentioned today in Jonathan Cooey's show, Giggle Own Biological. And Dr. Sears is a pediatrician, and I think he's a true hero. Dr. Sears, I believe, does things the best possible way. Dr. Sears has an astounding record for the health of the children that he has overseen during his career. Dr. Sears is not someone who's going to tell you exactly what to do. He will go over the pros and cons of various, let's just say, medical interventions, then health augmentation injections. He'll never say, you should never do it or you should or whatever. Dr. Sears has written at least a couple of books right now. And if you are a parent who wishes to raise a child that doesn't have any injections, Dr. Sears is someone that will work with you. He won't judge, and he'll tell you the pros and cons. He'll tell you if you're afraid of there being some side effects. He'll go over that with you. And I think he does it right because he leaves the door cracked open, because he knows if you go too extreme one way or the other, because there are some interventions such as, traditionally anyways, like the smallpox vaccine, which can apply certain protections and certain conditions and so on. He's still practicing. He's well into his 80s. And when I first asked for the little animation video to be made by my relative, I knew that this relative was very special. I have a great amount of admiration for this person. And I couldn't be more impressed at how amazing they are, having watched them growing up with incredible, immaculate health, mentally, physically, etc. So every time you see this little stop animation here with the Lego figure, okay, every time you see that, every time you see the handwriting, think that this is someone who 6.5 years ago now, hard to believe, was a patient, was someone who was under the protection, was under the guide of Dr. Sears. And I can say with 100% confidence that the interventions and the non-interventions that Dr. Sears worked with and advised resulted in an incredible, healthy human being. So there is a little bit of a nod, and as it's turned out, because I didn't expect COVID-19. I didn't know these vaccines, the whole topic of vaccines and immunizations and intramuscular injection and everything else, and the Human Genome Project was going to dominate my show. I had no idea. That wasn't the plan. But I wanted to tell you that one of the reasons why I keep that in there is it's a hat tip, and it's a thank you to Dr. Sears. It's amazing that I'm only one link removed, and I've been only one link removed from Dr. Sears for probably 14, 15 years. Never knew it. I'll never meet him probably, but my thanks goes out to him. There are good people out there who understand the system as it is. They understand it's Rome, so to say, to steal the theme from the movie Ben-Hur. And I think Dr. Sears has known how to play the game, and I extend a tremendous amount of thanks to him. So I just want to play music for just a moment, just to get myself in the right headspace. And I think you get an idea from the title of the show what it is I'm going to be covering tonight. It's Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Sonic.live, 11 p.m. If you go to Google and if you type in, quote, immigration is in the DNA of our country, unquote, and then Steve Bannon. Not immigration is the DNA, but immigration is in the DNA of our country. And of course, Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live, I speak as a citizen and as someone who's born in and will die in the United States of America, my country, which is my home. Hopefully you live in a great home too. I'm sure you do. I hope that everyone lives in a country amongst people, amongst family, and a community that they try to act as brotherly and loving with as possible. In this case here, Steve Bannon, the man from Goldman Sachs, the man who's known as being the president of Breitbart News, even though it really was Andrew Breitbart's until Andrew Breitbart was assassinated. And Steve Bannon in all of the places that his ugly head just keeps, and stained green shirt just keeps popping up quote, immigration is in the DNA of our country, unquote, Steve Bannon. Now, that doesn't sound like a very Steve Bannon thing to say. And Google AI, which I use, let's be honest, Google AI is just a way of, it has bias to it, but it also sometimes simply has built a little bit of a database, keyword database, compiled of various articles. So it is not a crime to sometimes look at the AI answer when you go to Google. All right, it's fine. But be very careful, because the answer is not guaranteed to be right. In this case, the AI says Steve Bannon did not say, quote, immigration is in the DNA of our country, unquote. In fact, his public statements and actions express views that are generally opposed to mass immigration. That's the AI response. I'll read it again. The AI response to searching for, quote, immigration is in the DNA of our country, unquote, Steve Bannon. The AI response on Google is, Steve Bannon did not say, quote, immigration is in the DNA of our country, unquote. In fact, his public statements and actions express views that are generally opposed to mass immigration. Now, I think that's pretty clear. If you listen to his statements on his podcast and his more recent statements, he would describe himself as a populist, nationalist, this, that, and all kinds of other big words that end in IEST and ists and isms and this and that. In fact, the user's query appears to be a distorted version of a 2017 exchange between Steve Bannon and CBS journalist Charlie Rose. Of course, Charlie Rose, given how much he's been in our discussion lately. But let us go back in time a little bit. This is the Sarasota Herald Tribune. This is a news article from 2006. Now, it was originally published in the Los Angeles Times, and then this article was then syndicated in many places. I'll read the full article, okay? But here we are. Steve Bannon helped Maharis, and that not last name Maharis, who is was a filmmaker here. Helped Maharis tighten up the film's dramatic arc, but left much of its raw footage alone. Quote, its power comes from it being real cinema verite, he said. This is Steve Bannon. Quote, it reminded me of when I first saw Harlan County, USA, which shows how a region can be destroyed by forces beyond its control. For me, the film's aha moment is seeing that those illegal immigrants coming over the barbed wire are not the bad guys. Immigration is in the DNA of our country, period. Steve Bannon said that 100% verbatim. Immigration is in the DNA of our country. That is Steve Bannon talking in a 2006 article. And Google AI, which like I said, use it, but with a grain of salt. Use Wikipedia, but understand that Wikipedia lies by omission. It is fine to use the tools of the internet, but you have to understand what the value of the information that they give you and work appropriately. All tools work in funny ways, whether you're talking about hand tools, power tools, etc. Different tools will give you different results, and you need to understand the consequences of using different tools. So Steve Bannon did say that. So I'm not going to here to debate whether or not he was right or not. If you want my opinion on it, not that you asked, but since you're here, this whole argument is kind of silly. If immigration and immigration alone makes a country great, then I offer you this thought experiment. Let's redesign the world so that with every generation, everybody needs to move to another country when they are 18 years old, without exception. If we can redesign the world that way so that 100% of the world is an immigrant at all times, I guess everyone will be a tech CEO with amazing quantities of money, great ideas, the heart of Jesus Christ, Everything will be perfect if we ensure 100% of the world is immigrants at all time. Now, that's a stupid thing. Of course that wouldn't happen. So this idea that immigration alone just makes everyone better all the time, regardless, is stupid. It's not to say that I'm a protectionist or whatever, but just the idea is stupid. Okay? It's stupid. There's truth in migrations. There's truth in parts of it, okay? But just this blanket statement, trying to argue it at a top level as 100% true all the time is just stupid. Sort of like saying every vaccine ever made has done nothing but kill people. Stupid. Every vaccine ever made has done nothing but help people. Stupid. Stupid, stupid, stupid when you get down to broad statements like that. So let's read the article here. And the article is interesting because it's at a time well before Steve Bannon has established himself as the patriarch of alternative media and conservative movies and so on. Now, he has already done one movie here, that whole In the Faces of Evil movie, which is funny because then he has this statement here. But it goes to show where he was. He wasn't that far off from where the Weinsteins were, which is probably why this is 2006. In 2005 and 2006, he's going into business with the Weinsteins. He arranged that. He went into business with Harvey Weinstein in 2006. There's no debate about it. It happened. At the very least, the movies from the Weinsteins were being redistributed through Genius Products, a company that Steve Bannon was a senior director on, and I think the CEO or the vice president was the guy who became the director of the Motion Picture Association, well as was a deputy in the United States State Department or something like that, Charles Rivkin, and whose dad I think was the who's had a godfather of Hubert Humphrey or something crazy like that. I mean, it's just wild. But let's read this article here. It was originally 2006 in the Los Angeles Times, and it's not a super short article. Here we go. Yes, it was written by a Patrick Goldstein. Citizen Cinema tackles illegal immigration. So let's read this. I'm way over here, so almost need my glasses. In the land of American Idol and YouTube, the era of citizen cinema is upon us. I guess this is before the era of podcasts. In one of those remarkable defining moments that exemplify the grassroots nature of today's pop culture, the most compelling film about the immigration reform debate that's raging across the country, and this is 20 years ago. See, nothing happens in 20 years, nothing. Across the country has come from a 63-year-old former school teacher living outside a tiny border town in southern Arizona. With millions of immigrants marching in the streets and Congress squabbling over border security legislation, the tussle over illegal immigration has reached something of a fever pitch in America. But so far, mainstream Hollywood has been silent on the subject. Its portrayals of immigrants, with the exception of a great sequence with an enraged Sikh in the crime thriller, quote, Inside Man, unquote, largely limited to cheap stereotypical laughs. So, Mercedes Majerus must have been crazy to think she could have an effect on an issue that has divided families and businesses, as well as the entire Republican Party. After all, she was living in rural Cochise County, 2 miles north of the Mexican border, where she and her husband had moved in 2003, hoping to enjoy the open vistas and clean air. Only after they bought a home there did Majerus discover that about 100 feet from her new house was a smuggling trail used by hundreds of illegal immigrants to make nightly border crossings. One evening, she was jolted awake by the roar of a helicopter overhead. The wash from its blades rattling her windows as it chased a group of people toward a trio of nearby Border Patrol trucks. Maheras grabbed, I'm going to go back over to page E3 here, grabbed her video camera, ran outside in her nightgown, and recorded the drama from her driveway. She said, quote, "It scared the daylights out of me. With the helicopters flying by every night, it feels like you're living in a war zone. I thought, I have to film this because otherwise no one's going to believe it," unquote. Armed with an affordable video camera and a compelling idea, an angry homeowner can be transformed overnight into a documentary filmmaker. You wonder where Steve Bannon got the ideas. Although it has never received a theatrical release, Maheras' film, Cochise County, USA, Cries from the Border, has found a growing audience on the home video front, having sold close to 20,000 copies, an impressive tally for a documentary by an unknown filmmaker. Distributed by Genius Products, the film has been touted by a growing number of conservative websites, talk radio hosts, and the Wall Street Journal, which recently ran an op-ed piece offering a classic red state endorsement, saying the film had, quote, "the wrong politics for Hollywood," unquote, adding that screenings of the film had been poorly attended, quote, "in the salons of Cambridge and San Francisco," unquote. It's easy to see why conservatives have embraced the film. While Mercedes Maheras does interview a few immigrants looking for work, she's fluent in Spanish, a healthy chunk of the movie is devoted to complaints from unhappy Cochise County locals, decrying car thefts, drug smuggling, and property damage, as well as the devastating toll that the influx of border crossers has had on the local healthcare system. The film hardly mentions the benefits of goods and services provided by cheap immigrant labor. Although the film is not especially sophisticated, Mercedes Maheras, like Michael Moore, has an uncanny ability to capture both incendiary images and real human emotion. The movie opens with a striking sequence of a seemingly endless stream of people illegally ducking under a barbed wire fence, crossing the border as we hear the famous Emma Lazarus poem that adores the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. What's especially startling about the film is that its filmmaker doesn't fit any of our natural cultural preconceptions. To put it bluntly, Mercedes Maheras is no liberal baiting Ann Coulter. She spent much of her life in Santa Monica, California, where she worked as a volunteer in a homeless shelter, studied meditation, worked in an interior design, and ran a video firm that produced educational films. She has a master's degree in arts and Latin American studies and has been a longtime advocate of prisoners' rights. A political independent, Mercedes Maheras views the film as a nonpartisan educational tool. Quote, "As a teacher, I felt responsible for leaving a record of all this for sociology and law classes. It's like I told our sheriff, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Maybe if people see the bodies of people who've died trying to cross the border, maybe they'll be inspired to take some action," unquote. Her pictures have stirred emotions at almost every turn. When she screened the film for Gerald Kicanas, that's Kicanas, the bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Tucson, Arizona, she says she became very distressed over what he felt was the film's lack of empathy for the immigrants. He said, "Stop this, I have to go," and he left 20 minutes into the film, unquote. On the other hand, when Representative Tom Tancredo, Republican of Colorado, a staunch advocate of border protection, saw the film, he refused to sponsor a screening in Washington because the film had interviews, Maheras said, with illegal immigrants and, quote, "an ACLU propagandist," unquote. Mercedes Maheras' big break came when producer Christopher Bannon heard her on a talk radio station in Tucson, Arizona. Christopher Bannon tipped off his brother, Stephen Bannon, an ex-Goldman Sachs investment banker who heads Genius Products, an independent home video distributor that has partnered with Harvey Weinstein and Bob Weinstein to handle the Weinstein Company's home video releases. I got a lot more to add on that. Stephen Bannon, who has directed a film himself, a 2004 documentary about President Reagan's battle against communism, sensed that Maheras was the perfect spokeswoman for such explosive material. More specifically, Stephen Bannon released a film in 2004 about Reagan's battle against communism and Islamofascism, of course tying it in with Osama bin Laden and, well, maybe because the planes on September 11th, 2001 were obviously real and they were obviously hijacked by obvious Muslims, flown in the buildings, and the buildings blew up, obviously only because of the gas on the planes and for no other reason. None of that can be disputed, and I guess the alternative narrative from Michael Moore, who released a film about the same subject in the same year, only a few weeks before, provided a dramatically different viewpoint, that the planes were real and the planes were definitely hijacked, and they were definitely hijacked by Muslims, but I guess they were allowed by the CIA and Bush because they made some money on oil contracts. Wow, such incredibly different viewpoints. And oh, by the way, the Michael Moore film was funded by Miramax, Disney, and more importantly, Bob and Harvey Weinstein. So now, Bob and Harvey Weinstein are doing business with Steve Bannon. So Steve Bannon, I'm not saying this Steve Bannon is the mastermind here, but whatever the interests are that Steve Bannon is associated with, control almost the entire spectrum of allowable debate and discussion about what could have happened on September 11th, 2001. But let's get back here. Steve Bannon, who has directed a film himself, a 2004 documentary about President Reagan's battle against communism, sensed that Mercedes Maheras was the perfect spokeswoman for such explosive material. Steve Bannon said, quote, "If you called Central Casting and asked for someone from Middle America with all the American characteristics of fairness and compassion, you'd get Mercedes Maheras. She wasn't someone from Greenwich Village flying in to do a movie. She's a real person from a very specific place who's telling a very personal story," unquote. Steve Bannon helped Mercedes Maheras tighten up the film's dramatic arc, but left much of its raw footage alone. Steve Bannon said, quote, "Its power comes from being real cinema verite." I might be mispronouncing that because I'm an uneducated white American, I guess. "It reminded me of when I first saw Harlan County, USA, which shows how a region can be destroyed by forces beyond its control. For me, the film's aha moment is seeing that those illegal immigrants coming over the barbed wire are not the bad guys. Immigration is in the DNA of our country. It's what we represent." Is that really true? Really? Really? That's what we are. That means that America can't be America once you're born in America anymore, I guess. You have to leave. Because we're all immigrants. Unless we were born here. What if you're first have First Nation blood like I do? What are you supposed to do? It's such a silly thing to say. It really is. Yes, the United States is different. Yes, we are very diverse compared to most countries, but Steve Bannon said it. Now let's go on to what Steve Bannon also said. Although Steve Bannon is a true blue conservative, is he really? Is he really? Steve Bannon is a true JFK guy. I don't even know what that means, but he's a true JFK guy. He is a true Catholic militant, loyal to the Vatican. He went to a very prestigious, very low enrollment, military-oriented Catholic school in the Maryland area. That's his allegiance, which is fine. But come on, this true blue conservative thing, I don't even know what that means. Although Steve Bannon is a true blue conservative, He's in the business of with the Weinsteins, who are ardent liberals, and his company distributed the video of the John F. Kerry documentary Going Up the River. That's interesting because John Kerry also worked very closely with a lawyer named Richard Verma, who I believe sent people such as Piper Stover and maybe even a couple of others to provide some company, consult, and manipulation and chew up the time of a mutual friend of our channel, Jonathan Cooey of Giggle Home Biological. You can go to gigglehomebiological.org. Steve Bannon has little time for what he calls the conservative victimology view of Hollywood. Steve Bannon says, I see a lot of films from young conservatives, and they just don't have the filmmaking chops yet, he says. So I guess Steve Bannon here openly admits that a lot of films from other young conservatives in America he doesn't show because they don't have the chops. Those are his words. Now, maybe he's lying. I'm not saying that just because it's in print, that doesn't mean it's true, but it is true that it was printed. Now, continuing on, I guess this is more Steve Bannon. That's not to say that if you walked into a studio with Senator James Inhofe's, I forget who that is, lecture on global warming being a hoax, which is just as compelling as Al Gore's, I mean, you'd get laugh out of every business meeting in town. But the system out here is very Darwinian. The conservative stuff I see just isn't very commercial. If it was, someone else would do it. Again, that's very interesting. So Steve Bannon, as selling himself, first of all, if Steve Bannon really believes that this liberalism is such a threat, he has made a decision to take the money by working with the Weinsteins as opposed to promoting people who don't have the chops yet. Steve Bannon openly admits that he takes the money first. I have no idea how many people approach Steve Bannon with ideas for conservative filmmaking, and I'm not saying that conservative filmmaking would have been filled with good ideas, but he is suggesting here that his Darwinianism led him to support John Kerry and ultra-liberal and Weinstein films and everything else because there's the money. And then he had become a gateway now because he is viewed as the conservative, the true blue conservative with the money. And what do we have today? We have a whole network of fake populists who are previous, for the most part, non-conservatives at the very least, masquerading as the new true blue conservatives who are here to save America, all being led by Steve Bannon. Or at the very least, he's some sort of manager of this. So let's finish this article here. What Steve Bannon does not see in today's movie world is how the arrival of let me restate this. This paragraph is key. What Steve Bannon does see in today's movie world is how the arrival of new video technology has dramatically leveled the playing field in film. In the new bottom-up culture, like podcasters, amateur filmmakers are our new orators. One of the most talked about films in the recent Tribeca Film Festival was The War Tapes, an Iraq War documentary whose footage was shot by soldiers from the New Hampshire National Guard. So, Steve Bannon knows, or at least here is setting the precedent, that the future is going to be everyday people. But But here's the problem, okay? I'm an everyday person. I mean, maybe I'm not everyday, but I'm not from the machine. I happen to be a damn good competitive intelligence analyst, product marketing person whose passion was really to be an engineer for the first 10, 12 years of his career. It wound up being in the data storage industry, even though my interest was actually in parallel processing and operating systems and device drivers. But it wound up being in the data storage industry because that's where the jobs were. That's where the opportunities were in my area. And then because of just the way I liked to work, I guess, I don't know, my own skill set, I wound up, and it's because I was able to have effective communications with customers and with business, and I enjoyed being able to break down those ideas that I wound up taking the path that I did. But either way, after I'm in my 7th year, and I don't even think I have 2,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. How's that? 1,000, closing in on 1,400 episodes of full-length episodes, probably, I don't know exactly how many video shorts, 500 to 900 shorter videos in addition to that, several hundred additional videos backed up from other sources in addition to that, plus well over 50,000 assets right now saved in one of the largest independently maintained archives on the internet. All that, plus probably the most compelling, at least one of the, and definitely the most innovative and realistic description of September 11th, 2001, plus providing all the help I have to other channels, you'd think I'd be killing it. And being the only person on the internet that actually regularly talks about the currently ongoing largest loss of life event in United States history, numerically anyways. The only one that doesn't that is larger when adjusted for population is the United States Civil War. And we even lost our own child to it. And I don't even mention that every episode. But it's there. And you know what? I don't have a staff. I work on, people will send me, I have, $900, actually, that's $600, $650 a month right now on Patreon to pay $2,000 a month in operating expenses. Sometimes I'll get a check for $50 or $100 or several $100 once in a while from some people, but it barely covers the bills. Meanwhile, there's other podcasters that pop up out of nowhere with professional studios. They're not surrounded by their Lego kits that they built with their grandchild. So Steve Bannon realizes that what is going to be infectious, what's going to catch, is the perception of independent people being independent. And he knew this back in 2006. And that is little by little what fed the world of podcasting. That is why Steve Bannon could afford, he has a huge staff. He doesn't have to be in front of a fireplace in a condominium in Washington, D.C. That's an act. Like, I have no better place to do than to put a couple of crosses on a mantle in my fireplace and make it look like I'm broadcasting from my living room. It's all an act to create a sense of sincerity. Meanwhile, there's a staff of 10, 20, or 40 people responding to emails, scheduling interviews, doing promotions, selling T-shirts, handling the travel, doing the budget, etc., etc., etc. You don't have a one-man circus like Jonathan Cooey, who manages more video equipment and has a higher video quality than just about anyone. Not to mention anyone who's working independently. But that is why Jonathan Cooey is just barely scraping by. Because that is what real independence looks like. You don't have an additional 10 or 20 or 40 people, working with other people to promote books and Substacks and everything else, not to mention get tons of fake money through fake Substack subscriptions and fake Amazon book sales from people that don't even really exist. But anyways, that sounds like I'm whining a little bit, and maybe I am whining a little bit, but I'm highlighting the vision that Steve Bannon was already connected in with. But the main reason why I did this show is I wanted to highlight this article here. Oh, and the other thing here is when it comes to Steve Bannon and the Weinsteins. Steve Bannon has had a pretty big influence in independent films, and that is also a lie, because the money comes from somewhere. It's not just someone, playing a banjo on a street corner somewhere with a hat, on the ground saying, "Hey, throw some money in there, support my independent movie." The independent films that get boosted and seen are paid for by big money somehow or another. It is what it is. It's an illusion. And when it comes to the Tribeca Film Festival, which Robert De Niro himself has admitted as trying to recruit things which are more biological and scientifically oriented in a statement that he made on September 11th, 2002, and Robert De Niro at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York wound up, that was all of the controversy about the Vaxxed movie, which of course involves indirectly Steve Bannon, but the rest of the Steve Bannon network, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Holland and so on and so forth, it's all connected. That is why there was all that controversy about Steve Bannon being kicked out of the Tribeca Film Festival in 2017 after some sort of invitation. And as Jonathan Cooey showed today, gee, what an amazing surprise it was on the most recent Jimmy Kimmel show. Remember, Kimmel Goes Back with Adam Carolla, Kathy Griffin, Dr. Drew, all the way back to 1995. But when Jimmy Kimmel is doing his show, his great big, "I'm back on the air after being, pounded down by the fascists," or whatever, the other night, he had on a surprise guest, Robert De Niro. No surprise. That's right, the same Robert De Niro who caused all that controversy at the Tribeca Film Festival the year before Steve Bannon caused all that controversy. And of course, Robert De Niro is admired by Quentin Tarantino as the greatest actor of our generation. And now you're back into the Quentin Tarantino and Harvey Weinstein circle, which, as these articles show, Steve Bannon was a huge financial supporter of Weinstein operations after they got kicked to the curb. We think after all of that drama with Michael Moore, and I think even that was really because the Weinsteins weren't doing very good. I think Steve Bannon was a smarter investor. I think that's true, but just the same, Steve Bannon is lying, I believe, here about being this true blue conservative. He is a gatekeeper. And I'll bet you there's been a lot of very compelling ideas which have been put forth by various conservatives. And you know what? There's probably been a lot of really good ideas and viewpoints from more liberal or progressive Americans as well, which never saw the light of day. It's not all one way. And as we showed in the article here, I should say, Google AI, that is just a flat-out lie from Google AI. It is what it is. Can't trust it. So it's 48 minutes. We got to see some messages here. I see Juanita has typed in some long things here. Hopefully these aren't just copy and pastes. Now I'm convinced, Sky Crane earlier says, now I'm convinced that Ronnie Reagan was totally on board with the Human Genome. Reagan absolutely was, Sky Crane. I've showed this picture many times. I'll show it again. Let's see here. Go to my my Lederberg page here. LED. And remember, Bush Sr. Gave the Medal of Honor or Medal of Freedom or whatever to Lederberg. But this is a photo from 1985 or 1986, obvious White House. And who's Reagan sitting next to? Is he sitting next to Jeffrey Epstein? He's sitting next to Joshua Lederberg. That is Lederberg on the left and Ronald Reagan. This is Lederberg as one of the most consequential Americans of the last 100 years, without doubt. And this project, this Human Genome Project, is happening. Question is, who's going to be the primary benefactors for it? And Joshua Lederberg was clearly one of the main drivers of it. He's the president of the Rockefeller at this time when they're having this particular meal. And, of course, these events are staged. They're staged for people to take photos. But trust me, if you look at the size of the library, the quantity of communications that Joshua Lederberg had, they are astounding. They would I don't even know how many thousands and thousands of feet of correspondence he had with people. What we know of on the surface is very limited. His correspondence was extensive. The question is, who's going to control it and who's going to be at the top of the heap? And at this time, at this meeting in 1985, I don't think they knew exactly where it was going to go. In the mid-'80s, they were still trying to do one genome, and I think that they thought that they would get a lot from that one genome. I don't think they realized how difficult it would be, how long it would take, and I believe Lederberg made the mistake. As sinful as it was, let's be honest, okay, along with many others, of being on board the depopulation, or I should say the population control agenda. This is one of the greatest mistakes I think ever made as far as worldwide policy goes. The belief that there needed to be restrictions on population growth. They enforced it so poorly and so over the top, and it's going to have disastrous consequences. And they enforced it so hard, so fast, that the world is guaranteed. It's already, our second-order derivative is already negative. We're already heading towards population decline. It's sort of like monetary deflation. Once a deflationary cycle starts, it's very difficult to get out of it. It's possible, but it's very difficult. It requires a how would you say? First of all, you need to almost have a national a movement, a priority to reverse it. You can't just say, "Hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had more kids?" It takes something a little bit more serious than that. But going back to some of the other research that I've done, I suspect that Lederberg knew that they wanted to roll out some of the technologies which were going to be used for more data collection, because they urgently needed to collect more data on more people, and they needed to get some of their DNA transfection technology out there, DNA vaccines. And he knew the only population that would be able, that you could demand take such serious vaccines, to adopt new technology, and that would be tracked for their whole lifetime, was going to be the U.S. military. And I believe Lederberg was a big part of advising the interference which happened ultimately on September 11th, 2001, to preempt that large-scale planned biological terror attack, which was written about very extensively and precisely in books such as Germs, which was released on September 9th, 2001. So yeah, he's totally in on it. And again, for the record, I'm not against it myself. I just wish it was done openly and transparently, in ways which people could opt out if they so desire, and if there is risk to one's health, which is experienced because of their decision to participate in it, we have to weigh at the national level what compensation should that be. I see nothing against my religion or whatever, but to do so secretly, to expose people to risks which they don't even know about, these lies about all of this, disease just, coming out of caves and so on from bat guano, as in the hot zone, which we've just started. No, that I do not accept. That I do not accept at all. Nobody should. Julian, I'm sorry, I read that wrong a little earlier. How are you doing? U.S. communities to drive out Spanish for 12 years, restore traditional ways of life, outlaw Catholicism. Pope was a Tua Pueblo religious leader who organized and led the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, the first successful widespread rebellion against Spanish colonizers in what is now the American Southwest, driven by Spanish oppression, including religious persecution. He united the Pueblo people from various communities to drive out the Spanish for 12 years, restore traditional ways of life, outlaw Catholicism. It's interesting. John Hinckley probably shot a blank, and then the actor Reagan did. Well, it's you know what, Sky Crane. It's sad to even. Well, is it sad to think that? I don't know. I did come to one realization earlier, and this is something to think about with respect to the Charlie Kirk assassination. When people are it has been stated, okay, that when someone is a risk, when they're in a position they shouldn't be in, when they're causing too much noise, sometimes a decision is made that some people need to go. Right? We know what that means. Sometimes some people need to, a decision is made that some people need to go. So, for example, if someone is vibrant and intelligent and gorgeous and has everything necessary to really be the actual head of Children's Health Defense that Children's Health Defense should have had, that person probably would be a risk to someone like RFK Jr. or Mary Holland. So sometimes a person like Tony Bark, a decision was made, she's got to go. And when someone goes because they're not in line, because they put other people at risk, they go quietly. When if Tony Bark was assassinated, and I believe she was there a huge funeral with 10,000, with 100,000 people on it? Was it all over the news? Or did she go quietly? When Brandy Vaughn was killed, was there a lot of noise, or did she go quietly? When Dr. Quante Jang went, did he go with a lot of noise, or did he go quietly? When Dr. Annalisa Kilborn was killed, did she go with a lot of noise, or did she go quietly? And I have a long list of a lot of people that died very suspiciously, or many of them I think were killed. Maybe there's a little splash of news, but then they're gone. If somebody is killed because they need to go, unless they're a president, I believe every attempt is made to keep it as quiet as possible, and maybe even smear them a little bit on the way out. It's just a little thought experiment. If someone really is a threat, and if they're taken out, why would they be given nonstop television visibility day after day for weeks on end? That's usually not how it works. In the case of people such as Brandy Vaughn or Annalisa Kilborn or Tony Bark, they're gone, and most people don't even know they ever existed. Something to think about. And none of them were actors or actresses, as the case may be. And a lot of these badasses who I think were killed were women. Isn't that sad? Maybe there is something to be said about the strength there. All right, guys. I love you very much. Careful how you use Google AI. That's it for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. God bless. And thank you again. God bless you, Dr. Sears.